Hi, everybody. This is Hasselhob. I'm Giacomo, and today we are with a special guest, Rich Gilbert. Please, hello, introduce yourself. Let's tell us what you do and what your channel is about.
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Rich Gilbert. I have a pretty new YouTube channel that I talk about success and financial management and just getting to reach all your dreams in life. So nice to see everybody, have everybody here.
All right. So, can you tell us a bit about your background, where you studied, what is your work experience, and so on?
Sure. So I started out my career. To be honest, I've had many careers, and I started out later in life. I went to college when I was 26, and went from there into engineering in software, and then from there got an MBA. After an MBA, I spent 4 years at BCG, Boston Consulting Group, doing strategy consulting. Spent about 9.5 years at Google after that, in China and Singapore and Mountain View in California. And now I'm a chief product officer for a retail company here in Thailand.
All right. All right. All right. So, um, where did you start out? So you started in engineering, right?
Mm,
How was that transition from engineering to Boston Consulting Group to consulting? And
mm.
what was your role over there?
So I was an engineer for about 10 years in software, and then I decided to get an MBA. I didn't know anybody who had an MBA at the time. I didn't even know what MBA people did. And so I ended up through a series of events going to Wharton, where I went my first week. I went to the consulting club because everybody does, and they were talking. It was packed room, and the woman was talking about her experience as a intern. And she said, "Yeah, we were in McKinsey and we did normal 80-hour work weeks, and it was just typical and very excited." And I couldn't believe it. I at that point I never heard anybody working 80 hours a week, and so I just scratched consulting off my list. I actually ended up going to BCG by a bit of a fluke. Some friends of mine had a case competition. They needed a third person. The one person dropped out, and we won the whole case competition. The winner got an internship anywhere in North America at BCG. So that's how I got into consulting. And I did an internship for a summer, and I actually liked it. It was really interesting. Yeah.
So, for what kind of customers did you work for, and what was your engineering expertise useful for Boston Consulting Group?
So, so I consulted for a number of different industries. Like Boston Consulting Group, at least then they had a generalist model. So you can switch industries and switch companies and so on, and that was pretty normal. So I did quite a bit in tech, and that's where my software engineering really helped just to kind of get what they're trying to do. But it was also in like mega tech marketing, right? Which is not necessarily an engineering skill. And then I did post merger integrations, due diligence, strategy. I did some consulting for manufacturing throughout Asia and the world. And where my engineering really came in is about the analytics. It's about thinking analytically, thinking about how to solve a problem, hypothesis driven analysis, and that sort of thing. So the MBA really helped a lot, to be honest. But consulting companies love engineers.
All right, all right. Were your colleagues from, let's say, a similar background from yours or completely different?
So uh, most of them, most of my colleagues went to an amazing prep school or high school. They graduated and went to an incredible university, and then ended up at a top-notch business school to be a consultant, or they came right out of university to be an associate level. And for me, my background was a bit non-traditional. I was, as I mentioned, I was 26, went back to school, my first child on the way. It was difficult. So, similar in terms of education, right? I went to some good schools, but in terms of background, boy, those guys just had all the right steps, at least at BCG.
All right. But what I think is if there's less diversity, probably you had an edge on certain things that other people didn't have. I- is that right? Where
Yeah.
did you get the sense that you had an edge on everybody else?
So there's certain maturity, right? There's at a certain point, you can think about working smarter rather than just working until 2 a.m. To pull something out. It's not always the best strategy because sometimes working until 2 a.m. is important. But I'll tell you, the smartest people I've ever worked with, right? BCG and Google, there's no real, an edge. Everybody's smart. Everybody is working those kind of hours.
All right. All right. All right. But um, did everybody, did people from top-notch university have an edge on everybody else that didn't come from, let's say, elite schools and universities?
Mm. Well, I hesitate to say it, but at least for BCG, they don't take anybody except the elite universities.
Yeah.
At least then, right? I mean, they have like some sort of local hires, but they take the top of the top from the top schools, and you can name them, right? I mean, in Europe and America, so super hard to get into. They do take some from other schools, but they're usually top regional schools. So as far as an edge, you're in an environment where everybody has that kind of educational background. So the level of conversation, the level of analysis that's expected is just it's up there. You really need to be on top of your game.
All right. So back back when you were at Boston Consulting Group, when you got hired at BCG, did they do the business cases in the hiring process? How was that like? And how can you properly train for that?
Yeah, they did, and and I'll tell you, I I did not like them at all. They are difficult, but you got to approach them, like a game, like it's fun, because otherwise it's just a lot of hard work. Um, so at least at Wharton at business school, people practiced 24/7 when it was hiring season, and even before. They run in rounds in a business school, and around springtime, the all of the hiring picks up, so everybody is in the hallways, in the rooms, practicing cases. And so there's lots of places that you can get sample cases, and then you would just choose a partner, and you would do a case, and then they would do a case, and then everybody's doing this. The other thing which was good was these case competitions that they would have, where they would have a real case that one of these consulting companies had done, and then you would get a team together and actually work to solve it, and that was really useful.
Okay, but did you have sort of a sponsored program by university to practice? Did they give you some tools to prepare, some, I don't know, books or anything to help you out, or that was up to you just to no, not at all?
No, not at Wharton. They might have that now. They might have a whole class on prep, but really, look, I mean, either you have the analytics muscle and drive to get into consulting. It is hard, make no doubt about it. The competition is fierce, and especially for the top consulting firms. But there are lots of consulting firms out there, and if you really want to get in consulting, there's a place for you. But at least at Wharton, the stress was on, or the emphasis was on group work, was on self-starting, and to be able to you figure it out sort of for yourself. So I think there's a lot of value in that, rather than kind of holding your hand.
All right, very insightful. And so, if you say most people practiced, there were certain periods of the year where everybody practiced. Was that the go-to place for students, or some others prefer, I don't know, investment banking or asset management? Is that where did they prefer to go, most of them?
Yep. So Wharton is a very heavy financial school. So no matter what you specialize in, you get an amazing financial education at Wharton, and just by being there. And so it's also in Philadelphia, which is very close to New York. So it was a feeder school to Wall Street for decades. So one of the biggest was iBanking, and then consulting was probably second, and then at that point, tech was really starting to come up in the world as a viable alternative to non-tech people, and that really changed after 2008 and the financial crisis, where the idea of being a trader, or working in Wall Street, as asset management, those positions became a lot more rare.
Okay, okay. So, from your perspective, I know that there's this sort of culture that's called up or out. Did you see that firsthand?
100%. Yeah, nothing personal. It's nothing that's anybody gets upset about. It's simply you either get to the next level, and there's certain rounds there, or they're very generous when they ask you to leave, right? So at a certain point, most people, you start out in a class where there's a whole group of people about at your level, and most people, as you go on, they leave. Either they leave voluntarily, because it's a very stressful, very intense travel and work environment, or they don't make it to the next level, and they're kind of head out.
Okay. So, another thing that came out recently is the report from um, analysts from Goldman Sachs and their working hours. How would you rank the work-life balance in consulting, and how does that position compare to, let's say, investment banking or asset management and other and tech, let's say?
Mm.
How would you rank that?
So, coming in as an engineer, I'd literally never heard of anybody working 80 hours a week. It was bizarre. Um, and although, now, of course, that's, I think it's more my own naivete at that point. But the way we would think about it is sort of where consultants will work 80 hours a week, the iBankers will do 110 or 120 a week. And there are not that many hours left in the week, but people, I don't know if this is still the case, pretty sure like people would be sleeping under their desks, and on occasion, and just getting home for a couple hours of sleep in iBanking, and then coming back to to do a presentation on the deal book that they made the night before. Yeah.
Okay. But is there in consulting, is there a culture of having the weekend off, or did you get to work even on Saturdays and Sundays frequently?
Mm. And you know what? Why don't I can explain a little bit of what the model is, at least at BCG there, and I think McKinsey and Bain are similar. So typically you would be at the client site for the weekdays, right? So if you had to fly, like for a while, I was flying from San Francisco, California, on Monday on a 6.5 hour flight to New York City, and then I would stay there the entire week, and then probably fly back in the afternoon on Thursday, 6.5 hour flight again. If I were flying up to Seattle, it's a 2 hour flight. I'd get there on Monday morning. And then, basically you got a great hotel, you got great restaurants and all of that, but you're working that entire time. Like you are full, head down. Usually you wake up early, get working by, 7 or 8 in the morning, depending, and then work until dinner, have dinner maybe with your colleagues, and then get back to your hotel room and work some more. So that's your week, right? And sometimes it's not uncommon to work until 11, 12, 1 in the morning each day. Weekends, so we had kind of a Friday office day. We'd get back to San Francisco, and we'd have some trainings, we'd have some nice activities, and they really did well with that sort of thing. Like really make that downtime fantastic. Weekends, typically, given all that you do on the week, typically you don't work on weekends. But if you're doing a due diligence that's a 2 week sprint, you can count on working weekends. If you're doing a demanding client or a very difficult case, you're working weekends. You really don't have a choice. So you have to be ready for that.
Okay, okay. So, another thing that I wanted to break down for the people watching is how the salaries are. Break down a bit the roles in consulting, from the entry point to the partner and managers and so on, and how the salary structure, both the fixed salary and the bonuses usually. I'm not saying to tell you in a specific every role the exact amount, more
Oh,
or
that's a
less, let's
good
say.
that's a good question. So, yeah, I don't recall exactly what the salary and bonus structure was, but it was generous for
Okay.
sure. And every year or 2 years was a big step. So at BCG, and they all have similar structures at the top strategy firms. At BCG, you come out of college as an associate. And I'm telling you, that's like coming out of undergrad, joining one of these firms. That's the best time to join for a couple of reasons. But you'd be as an associate. They're the smartest kids that you'll ever meet. And they are like, they handle all of the Excels and really down deep in the data. And then typically you have to go to business school and you come out as a consultant. It's changed a little bit as they have specializations and so on, but that's generally the case. You're a consultant for about 2 years, and that means you have a couple of associates working with you, and you're sort of thinking through the strategy on your module and so on. Then you become something like a projects leader, where you have a couple consultants, they have a couple associates, and you're in charge of a bigger chunk, and your salary goes up significantly with each level. After that, it's something like a principal. I think in McKinsey, it's an engagement manager, but this is the person who is the frontline uh, point of contact with the senior client for the case or for the
Okay.
consulting engagement. And that's a significant jump. That's quite a lot of money when you get to that stage. Certainly, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And then as a partner, the key with being a partner is you need to have your own book of business. So as a partner, it's really about sales. So you've gone through these ranks and you've been a practitioner this whole time. And then as a partner, you have to build the client relationships. You have to, pitch the consulting engagements and basically eat what you kill. And you usually have about 3 years where they kind of give you money during that time, and they pay you even if you're not kind of reaching that level. But after 3 years, you have to be getting a certain amount of business or you're out.
Yeah, you have to bring business to the firm, right?
Totally. Yep. At
Yeah,
that level.
yeah. What I wanted to ask you, if your background is economics or finance, did you ever see somebody just with a bachelor getting into consulting, or you need to have an MBA in order to get in?
Yeah, you need a higher degree. So you can get into consulting definitely with a bachelor's degree. And you come in as an associate. That is a fantastic route if you can do it, but that's super competitive because usually that way that works is you work for 2 to 4 years, depending on the office and the firm, as an associate, and then they'll pay for your business school, which
All
is
right. Wow.
awesome. Yeah. And then you got to work, I think, like 2 or 3 years after that. But man, that's a big payoff if you like the work. As a consultant, they are typically looking for post MBA people. The only exception I've seen is somebody who did their PhD, I think at Oxford, on I forget what it was. Might have been economics. I'm not sure, but I don't think that one guy, right? One guy and all the people I know, I don't think he had an MBA.
Okay. So
Yeah.
for the most part, you need to have an MBA in order to get in.
Yeah.
Okay. But is that common around the industry for the company to pay for your education, or is that something that you saw just in BCG?
What to prefer the what education? The MBA or the
Yeah, yeah, the MBA.
Yeah. Look, there are zillions of consulting companies out there, right? I mean, there's not only like, BCG, Bain, McKinsey, but there's also like Accenture does a lot of consulting.
Yeah.
IBM around the world does consulting, and so on. There's lots of them.
And the Big
And
Four and so on. They do
that's right.
different things
That's right.
usually.
So they're gonna, I know Accenture hire and Deloitte, they hire a lot of technical people because they do a lot of technical consulting, technical strategy, and so on. You don't need an MBA for that, but for that like strategy consulting, look, they're paying, for a consultant, they're paying, a couple $1,000s you know, they're paying a lot for these
Yeah.
people. So they want some indication that these people are, amazing and credible and so on. And an MBA helps,
All
right?
right. All right. All right. So, what I wanted to ask you is, what are the technical skills that were most needed both in consulting and in Google?
Mm. Well, it's those are very different technical skills that you need. I can talk through Google. It really on Google. It depends on what position you have. With consulting, a couple of things you absolutely need is you gotta build PowerPoint. So you need to there are a couple of things. One, the analytics, right? So you have to be sort of hypothesis driven. You think about like, here's the big problem, here's my idea of what it should solve, and then this is the data that I would need to solve that, to either prove that or disprove it. And right away, right at the beginning, like the first couple days of a new engagement, you would write the deck. You would write the end deck of like, hey, here's the story of how I think this is going to end. Here's all the data that I think I'm going to get, and then you start going out and trying to get that data and trying to prove or disprove it. And if things come up and it's not exactly your hypothesis, you change the deck, right? And you modify it. So PowerPoint's critical. Excel is critical, mostly at the more junior levels, at the associate level. Being an Excel jockey is like a wizard. Like pivot tables, and you don't need macros, but all of the functions, all keyboard shortcuts are really big.
Okay.
Yeah, and honestly, the as a consultant, your your value is your brain. Your value is your ability to look at a very difficult problem that smart people at a company can't solve for whatever reason, and then solve it and communicate it. So that's really the skills that you need to build there.
Okay. Um, Going back to your Google experience, what was your role and what were your tasks over there?
Hmm. So I had a couple of roles at Google, and that's one of the fun things of working there is that you can just sort of find a new opportunity and switch and change offices or change. If you're in good standing and you have the skills, you can move around quite a bit. I have, for the most part, I was doing product management, which is a technical role. So you need a computer science degree, typically, for that. And what product managers do are decide what kind of things should go, what kind of features should be brought into the product, or what sort of new products might be made, and then going and getting the engineers to go make it. So that's a lot of fun. I mean, that's one of my favorite. I still do that today. That's one of my favorite activities because you really create something out of nothing,
Okay.
and you see it, and it either jumps revenue or whatever you're looking at to do, or it doesn't, and you figure out something else. I also ran a sales team, a technical sales team for a couple of years. That was fun, helping large customers to maximize their digital marketing, and yeah, rolled out a bunch of other systems and so on. This is a fun time.
Okay, okay. Going back to consulting, so if you have to solve problems, you need to have data. Many people say that data is the most valuable commodity out there.
Mm.
And what are the best data sources for consulting? I know from my background, everybody starts to train on Bloomberg and Thomson Reuters and so on. Did you have different data sources or did you use the same?
Yeah, no, you never touch Bloomberg as a consultant. I know I say that, and you're going to get all these comments saying, "Oh, I did it," but
Okay.
but honestly, but the Bloomberg, yeah, for consulting, they do consulting in so many industries and in so many sort of niche areas of those industries that any of the consulting firms will typically have a research department where for instance, I did a due diligence, a 2 or 3 week due diligence on the bathroom industry for Europe. Right, some
Okay.
company wanted to buy some other company from Europe, and they're like, "Is it a good purchase?"
Yeah.
Right? That's the question. So immediately I go to the research department and have them research everything about the European bathroom. This is like tubs and toilets and all, everything about that market, all of the players, where they stand, all of that, and they deliver just a huge amount of information that then I need to digest and become an expert in that industry within 2 days. Right? It's a couple of days you have to and this is, it's one of the things that you learn in a very good MBA program is to digest massive amounts of information that you there's no way you can get through it, and
Okay.
to understand the key points and to get up to speed really quickly.
Okay. But how do they get all this data? Are there any um, data sources that maybe you don't use in university and so on? What are the technical instruments they use to gather all this data?
Yeah. So typically there are all of them. The short answer is every single one that's needed. So it could be something like, and they subscribe to all of them. They pay subscriptions like, lots and lots of money, so they have full access to all of this data. If they need Bloomberg, they'll use Bloomberg. But it's typically things like Like for for M&A and that sort of stuff, it might be something from Crunchbase, but there's other things like, from I think Standard and Poor, CIA, there's all kinds of demographics data. There's, M&A data. They have data sources you've never heard of.
Okay.
And these people, at least at BCG, they could find stuff about industries and companies and competition that you never knew existed. And that's their job. They're really good at it.
Okay. So if data is so important, would you say that people that have a background from data analytics have an edge on just regular economics or finance in that field?
In consulting, there's a difference between data and insight.
Okay.
And the real value that the research team can bring the data, but the consultant brings the insight. The so what? Why do I care? Okay, so the competitive landscape looks like this. The growth of all of the players looks like that. The profit margin looks like this. But so what? How does that translate into strategy? What should the client do? And that's the value of the consultant. And that's really, it's not a mechanic, like a technical skill. It is really about solving problems. That's the
O-
skill you bring to the table.
Okay. Um, Another thing that I wanted to ask you is how was the working environment like? So, did you get along with the people there? Do you still have, let's say, relationships with your former colleagues, or is there something? Is there an environment where you don't get to, um, let's say, um, connect with the other people? You're just competitive with each other.
Yeah, no, there's no, that's a great question. There is no real competition amongst the team, and everybody stands on their own. You have your own module, and after every single engagement, there's this 4 or 5 page evaluation where they talk about what you did well and what you can improve, and everybody knows where they stand. And it's not like you're in competition with the next person, because in the next week you're on a different case with a whole bunch of different people, different manager, different team, and so on. So it's really about, like, I'm going to do the best job that I possibly can. and and the team that you're with, man, I love those guys. Like, like you would be on a case, and, like, go up to Seattle. Who do you know in Seattle? Not many people, right? So you're with your case team, and you go to work together, then you go have dinner together, and then you might go, have a couple of drinks together, and then go back and work some more. And you really get to be quite close. And they screen for the airport test, right? So if you're stuck in an airport with somebody for 5 hours, are you going to wring their neck and want to kill them, or are you're going to have a really interesting conversation? And to a number, at Boston Consulting Group, you would have a really interesting conversation. And just, and so, yes, I'm still in touch with many, many of them. They're all very successful and doing, incredible things. And yeah, and as far as the environment goes, BCG does a very good job of creating all kinds of fun activities that you can do. Like, we would do. I've done more vineyard tours at BCG, I think, than any other time in my life. Did sailing school. I've done cooking schools, like a whole bunch of those. Done sort of outings. We did parachuting one time, And
Okay.
yeah, and the legal department found out about it afterwards. They weren't happy at all.
Okay.
But you can especially as a leader, you have a budget to go do fun activities with your whole case team, and it's great. It's great.
Okay. So they invest in all these things in order to bring people together, right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Is that so? You worked in different places in different companies. Is that common, or is that something that you can find just in BCG or just consulting?
I think it's look in the best companies in the world, they invest in their people,
Okay.
right? Any company that you could name that has a good reputation, you bet that they are doing things to make their employees happy and increase the camaraderie and make them feel great at work, right? So like Google, I mean, I've been really lucky working at these two organizations because they both have outstanding reputations. At Google, you get 3 meals a day for free, and you can play foosball or basketball, go swimming, play volleyball, and it's totally fine. Like they don't bat an eye, right? And you go on outings, you go on big, they sponsor big, you know, collective events of like North America product managers or something,
Okay.
and BCG was the same. You'd have these big events where, big fancy place, and everybody would come from all over the place, a global meeting or whatever, and they would put in a lot of money there. Some companies don't do that, and either they can't afford it or they don't think, and they don't attract the best talent for sure.
Okay. 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 So, another thing that I wanted to ask you is how the hiring process differs from tech companies to consulting companies. What 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 are the things that they focus on in tech companies that they don't do in consulting companies?
So I can compare and contrast, Boston Consulting Group with Google and the hiring process. Um, they are both pretty intense hiring processes. There's no doubt, but they do screen. They are looking for different things, right? And in at BCG, the real key is the case interview. So if you bomb the case interview, there's no point on going for it. It doesn't matter if you're super nice, if you're super smart, if you bomb the case, there's like 150 people that will that are waiting to go try that case. So I mean, I interviewed a lot of people at BCG, and it's crazy. So I don't know if you've done a case interview before, but basically it's like, here's a business case, here's the problem, kind of high level, and what do you think? And you have to sort of, dig out like, oh, do I have sales data for the past 5 years, broken up by quarter? Yeah, I do actually have that. Here you go. Do you have, like what's the, how many SKUs are in, are they selling per year or something? What's the turnover? And the people who pass the interviews, you would at BCG as an interviewer, you'd write your own case interview
Yeah.
based on a case that you've had or something made up. And the people who really did well, it's like they had read your notes the night before. Like they are so freaking smart. They just, you have all this data that you don't tell them about, and they're just like, do you have this data? You're like, yep. Do you have this data? Yep. Do you have this one? Yep. Well, I would approach it in three different segments. Dump, 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 boom, done. And you're like, oh my God. Like this person just like, did somebody tell you what you were going to talk about today? But they don't. They're just amazing.
Okay.
At Google, they, we for product anyway, we would look at like five areas, and depending, and roughly it's like GCP, we'd call it general cognitive, or GCA, general cognitive ability, which is your smarts. right? So smart
Okay.
people know smart people. So if you can know pretty quickly if somebody's at that level of intelligence. So you judge them then. Sometimes it depends on what you're interviewing for, but role related knowledge, RRK, there are all kinds of acronyms at Google, and so on, and a couple of other things. And then also for a long time, I think they stopped it, but for a long time there was one about googliness. And
Okay.
it's a real thing. They're like, what do you think about their googliness? But nobody would ever tell you what googliness meant. So you just be like, yeah, like for some people it was the airport test. For some people, are they kind of quirky or wearing slippers or something? But like just, really it's about like, are these guys fun? Is this somebody you want to work with the rest of your life? Is this somebody who's like inquisitive and interesting and so on? Or is this like, like career person, working a cubicle. So yeah, it was fun, and at Google as well, man. It's I I interviewed probably a couple hundred product manager people. I think maybe two or three of them got hired.
Wow.
And I mean, yeah. So there's like a 400-to-1 ratio, or there used to be on applications that they would get, and overall the entire Google and hiring,
Oh,
400-to-1.
so realistically, how much time do you need to prepare the interviews, both in Google and BCG, more or
A
less?
ton,
All right.
a ton. You cannot underestimate that. Look, somebody might be able to go in cold and be like, they're just off the charts brilliant and they know exactly the whole. Don't count on that, because there
Okay.
are so many super smart people and they work. So, if you think about like BCG, if you think about the consulting group, they're picking the top of the top,
Okay.
and then asking them to work 60 to 80 hours a week. So, are you the top of the top? And, I'm not saying anything about myself. I kind of backdoored into it, but, and are you willing to put in that time, the 80 hours a week to prepare to get this amazing job? So, everybody out there is thinking of consulting. Don't underestimate that case interview. Just prepare, prepare, prepare. Yeah.
So is that easier to get into the Big Four rather compared to the McKinsey, BCG, and Bain? Is
So
that,
big four, you mean like the accounting firms, right? Like
yeah,
Price
Deloitte,
Waterhouse,
Deloitte, yeah,
yeah, PwC, yeah.
PricewaterhouseCoopers, and so on?
Um, yes. Now I don't have any data to back that
Yeah.
up. It's just yes, it is easier to get into the big four,
Okay.
for sure, for sure.
So, but if you have a Big Four background, is that easier to get into investment banking or consulting or asset management from your perspective and from the people that you know? Is that something that it's a better path to IP, asset management, or consulting?
So I'm trying to think of it. Anybody I knew from one of the big four in consulting, at least strategy consulting. I can't think of a one.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't think it helps. Let's just say that. Um, the Yeah, in fact, I'm like it's a different skill. I mean, it depends maybe what you're doing, right? So there is a path. I did know somebody that came from Accenture to BCG, and but they were doing tech consulting, and then BCG just wanted to create a tech arm and have real tech practitioners. So that's different. That wasn't strategy. It's more IT consulting. As far as the big four, so PwC and those Deloitte, um, if you're on the strategy side, okay, but look, I'll just tell you how they hire. The the mass bulk of the hiring from BCG is in waves of the undergraduates and then the graduates. And they have a season, they have a class where, every year they said, okay, we know our attrition, we know how many people we're going to lose. We need to hire, 50 or 60 or 90 people in the summer. So they wine them and dine them, and they bring them out to all crazy stuff. A lot of fun, best part of the whole journey. And then do all the case stuff and so on, and then they get a class that is a defined size, and then that class goes to the next level, and they lose a certain percentage of people and so on. They don't really hire from other companies,
Okay.
very rarely. Only if they want a specific skill, or they have somebody from like AT Kearney or something that's a partner that they want to bring in, has a book of business, but it's rare.
Okay.
It's rare. As far as asset management and iBanking, I mean, dude, the only people that I know are doing iBanking, I mean, they eat, breathe, and sleep it. Like, they they might start out as a trader or something, but like that iBanking thing, everybody I know who's done it has basically done it from the cradle, or from undergrad, and they're sleeping under their desks for a few years, and then
Okay.
working up to do to be what, like an MD or whatever that higher level is.
Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
So let's talk about travel. You traveled a lot during your um, consulting years and Google years. So in
Yeah.
a case I want to move elsewhere, let's say I live in Milan, I want to move to London or New York. Do I have to just get hired and then they move me around, or I just have to wait for the position in the right office where I want?
Whew. So it really depends on your situation.
Okay.
Um, okay, so as far as levels of difficulty, getting into these firms is really, really hard. Getting into a firm, locally is really hard. Getting into a firm in another city is another level of hard.
Ah, okay.
Getting into it into another country is really, really, really difficult. Because why would they? Like, why would I, if I'm a hiring, if I'm in charge of hiring in BCG, New York, and I see somebody from Milan, Italy, might be fantastic, but I got 500 people,
Hmm.
literally 500 people for the slots that are dying to come in. They're right in New York, and talk to them right here, right? And that's true for many jobs. So your best bet, get into into consulting, where you're at, and or do an MBA at a
Yeah.
top school, and then you're part of that whole hiring process. That would be, the path.
Okay. 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 So um, another thing that I think it's not very clear is that possible to negotiate your salary? Is that something that you
Nope.
can do? No,
Nope.
no, not
Dude,
even
no.
in more senior positions.
No.
Ah, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, no, that's it. Look, I mean, um, no. It's I mean, they pay you well. And
Okay.
they don't only pay you well, they give you like profit sharing and stuff, and to put into your retirement account. Like, I came out of BCG with a chunk of money for retirement. I didn't even know I was going to get it, and they're like, "Oh yeah." And then every year you're there, you get this, they take good care of you. Plus, you're traveling every week, so you really don't need an amazing place back home, and you're going to five-star hotels, top of the line restaurant. You can choose any restaurant you want, basically anywhere, any steakhouse, whatever. Fine, right? And and you're flying business class all over, the country or the world. Like, and you're making bank, You know, like no, yeah, you can
Uh,
try to negotiate. Maybe you can. Maybe you can. But like, I
no,
really
just
haven't
just
seen it.
just to get a better understanding whether is that something that happens or not. That was the it
I'm
doesn't
one
happen.
guy. Maybe it happens. I don't know. But like, typically, it's like, here's the package, you know, and you're like, wow, that's nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, okay. Um, so you moved to Thailand. So explain to us why you did that move. What are you working on or over there? What are you working on over there? And what are the advantages that you can see in Thailand that you didn't see elsewhere?
Mm. So I'm a big believer in living your life exactly the way you want to live it, right? So
Yeah,
like a career or money or any asset that you might have is really just to maximize what you want to do in your life, right? No matter what that is. So so the move to Thailand was like, I also lived in China for 7 years or so.
yeah.
Complete personal interest, right? Just because the world is a big, awesome place. And I love living in different cultures and I love experiencing the challenge of communicating in a different language and eating crazy food and being in a new market that like, okay, this is it's different colleagues and different work structures and so on. So for for Thailand, for me personally, that's why I'm here. I lived in China for 7.5 years, or 7 years. I lived in Singapore. I lived in Europe for 4 years,
Where in
um,
Europe exactly?
in Holland. So way
Okay,
early on, I did. I was working in nonprofit before I got my bachelor's degree, helping homeless and drug addicts and prostitutes in Amsterdam,
okay.
and around in Romania and Nepal and stuff. But yeah, and so Thailand's an amazing place. I mean, it's beautiful. It's always summer. It's a great. You have a great quality of life, and now, there's much more of a tech scene here, and um, yeah, I highly recommend it.
Okay.
So yeah, so I got the opportunity to come here, and I jumped on it.
So what are the business pros and cons of Thailand from your
Hmm.
perspective?
Yeah, so business wise, not many people know about Thailand, right? So if I told you about, if I say I worked at Google, everybody's like, "Oh, Google, I get that, I know
Yeah.
Google." But if I tell you the company I worked for in Thailand, you'd be like, "Is that a big company or a little company? Is that like what do they do?" And where in Thailand people know it, of course, uh, but as far as so there are a couple things in any time you're working cross culturally, you need to be sensitive to the local culture, right? So in Asia, the concept of face is very important. So you don't want to publicly like put somebody down. Where in other cultures that's totally normal, and not to put them down, but to say something challenging to them and so on.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest like downside is that when if I go looking for another job at some point, um, I just have to explain like, hey, yeah, it's a $13 billion business that I was I was working at, and it's big, and this is what I did, and then it's fine. Then it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Okay. Okay, okay. So since you have worked in tech, so if you want to start a business in Thailand, uh, is that hard? How, and if you're in technology, is venture capital available?
So So, without revealing too much, I'm going to be going through this journey over the next couple months.
Wow.
Yeah, and very excited about it. And like, will be going through everything on my channel, raising capital, building the founding team, all of it, right? Yes, there is VC money in Thailand. It's typically wealthy individuals and families,
All right.
mostly. The professional sort of VC firm dynamic that you find in Silicon Valley is not really here. So I know a couple of entrepreneurs in Thailand that have good thriving businesses. But if you're looking for a business that's going to be like the next Uber or something like that, you're better off incorporating in America or maybe Europe. But America's easier. Delaware
Yeah.
Corp because that's more fundable. Plus, everybody's comfortable with the laws, like that it's governed by, and and then you can have a subsidiary in Thailand, for instance.
Okay, okay, okay. So the venture capital environment has not yet developed enough, just like the US or Europe, let's say.
That's right. Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. Singapore. So the hot markets, the super hot markets in Southeast Asia. So the question is whether it's developed, whether the VC
Mm,
capital has developed well
yeah.
in Thailand. Um, no. So there are a couple hot markets in Southeast Asia, and they're hot. They are like super hot, and that is Indonesia is huge, Vietnam, and probably Philippines. Thailand is a bit older demographic. The average age here is over 40, and in Indonesia it's under 30. So very different, as far as venture capital goes. So if you start a company that's focused on Indonesia, um, everybody takes notice, but of course it's kind of a knife fight there, or a street fight, with everybody's going into Indonesia to do it, and they're usually based out of Singapore. So like local, a typical local startup would be based in Singapore because that's a bit more fundable than the other countries around.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But I'll tell you, it's exciting to be in Asia. I'll tell you, it is. You're
Yeah.
dealing with like 30% year over year growth on whatever company, or like I mean, it's just there's so much opportunity that I highly recommend it.
Okay.
Hmm.
So, did you get the chance to see any American investors or companies coming in Thailand or in that market? Because from what I know, I've watched some Bloomberg videos and I see that private equity firms are starting to invest more heavily in Asia, mainly in China, but more heavily in Asia. Did you get the chance firsthand to see that?
I am seeing that a lot in those other markets, Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines, centered around sort of the Singapore. In Thailand, there are a couple of deals happening, but not really. It doesn't have the real attention of the big VCs and M&A players that other places do, and even like things like AWS, right? Amazon Web Services. They're building data centers in Indonesia, but not really Thailand.
Okay,
It's yeah. So a lot of the tension is on the rest of Southeast Asia, but on the region as a whole.
okay. So, um, even in the stock market, do you usually see lower ratios compared to stocks in other countries around you, or yeah?
Yeah, I have not been paying attention to the Thai stock market at all. Like
Okay,
I think I got into that habit being in China because like the Shanghai um, stock market can look like a random walk.
mhm,
It's just like it doesn't have. It's very difficult to connect the fundamentals of companies with what their stock valuation is, and people put a lot of money in there just because there's not a lot of other investment vehicles there. So I haven't paid attention to it in Thailand really much at all.
okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So I think this is it for today. If you want to um, tell something about your plans, what we're going to see on your channel in the near future, and I'm done with the questions.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm I'm starting out in a very exciting space, super exciting, around data and AI, and the two things that I have experience with at Google, and I'm just going to chronicle how to start a tech company, and what works,
Wow.
what doesn't, and how I get funded, and how I build the team, and if it goes well, it's useful. If it goes badly, then that's entertaining anyway.
Yeah,
So
that's a learning experience for sure.
yeah, you bet. But I mean, it's super hot space. I'm going for it. It's gonna be big.
Okay, so we're gonna keep an eye on you. For all of you watching, make sure to subscribe to his channel. I'll leave the link in the description, by the way. So this is it for today. I'm Giacomo. This is Hustle Hub. See ya.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Giacomo. That was a lot of fun. Really
Thanks.
appreciate it. All right.
Thank you. Thank you,
Ha-
Richard.
Have a great day.
Thanks.
All right.